Hey guys, tonight we saddle up for a sleepy ride across the vast Mongol Empire. Imagine this. It's early morning and you're waking up inside a felt-lined gyr, round, warm, smelling faintly of wool, wood smoke, and fermented mare's milk. Your head is still fuzzy from yesterday's miles, and your legs ache in places you didn't know had nerves. Outside, the wind whistles like a bored flute player over the endless Mongolian steppe. Your horse, already up, is stomping softly in the frost, impatient to get moving. And you're about to join the most efficient, most bizarrely polite express delivery system the world had seen up to that point. You're a rider of the Yam, the Mongol Postal relay. You've got a dispatch strapped under your robe, sealed and sacred. No one touches it but you, unless they're carrying a much fancier hat and an even fancier sword. You ride alone, fast, with just enough food to outlast a dust storm, and maybe a spare saddle blanket to sleep under, though half the time you're too tired to bother. You probably won't survive this job long term. Statistically, it's somewhere between junior javelin catcher and snake pit lifeguard. But that's not tonight's concern. Tonight you've got a full belly, a well-rested horse, and about 40 kilometers to the next station. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And feel free to drop your current location and local time in the comments. It's always fun to see where everyone's drifting off from. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You adjust the reins with gloved fingers, grateful that it's only mildly freezing today. The Mongol steppe stretches before you in soft browns and faded greens, sprinkled with the occasional frozen dung pile. Every now and then a marmot pokes its head out of the ground, decides against it, and dives back in. Sensible. You're not galloping. Postal riders don't rush unless absolutely necessary. Horses are precious, and your real speed comes from the relay system. You'll switch mounts often, letting the next one pick up where the last left off. What matters now is rhythm balance, and not getting thrown off because you sneezed too hard. Above you, the sky is a crisp, ruthless blue. Clouds hang in it like tired sheep. The sun, though cold, still manages to burn your cheeks with its winter glare, and the air so dry it could suck the moisture out of a watermelon. Your lips are already cracking. You hum a tune under your breath, one your grandmother used to sing when tending the goats. It helps. As you ride, you pass a group of migrating herders. They nod politely. You nod back. No words. You're in uniform, sort of. Not that you're wearing anything particularly flashy. Just a coat, fur-lined boots, and a sash that marks you as Yam personnel. But the horse, the bearing, the sealed dispatch, those say everything. You're part of the Great Khan's veins, carrying the lifeblood of communication from one end of the empire to the other. Historians still argue whether the average Yam rider was seen as an elite, or just another cog in the Mongol machine. Some say you were respected like a town elder. Others insist you were basically treated like a fast-moving letter with legs. Probably both. Depends if you brought good news. Your fingers twitch at the memory of the last dispatch. You delivered a note written in Chinese, sealed with red wax, and definitely not meant to be read by your tired, unlettered eyes. You still wonder what it said. A battle plan. A love poem. A list of overdue yak taxes. You laugh softly, the sound muffled by the wind. Either way, you'll never know. And even if you could read it, you'd never dare. Tampering with a message is one of the few offenses that can get a person executed with alarming creativity. The Mongols didn't do things halfway, especially when it came to loyalty. Your horse slows as you crest a low hill. There in the distance, like a cluster of beetles clinging to the earth, lies the next relay station. Smoke curls from a chimney. You'll be there before sunset. You think back to your training. how to ride without bruising your kidneys, how to calm a spooked pony with a word and a gentle palm, how to balance a letter beneath your robes in such a way that no rain sweat or stray goat nibble could harm it. There was even a seminar, if you can call it that, on what to do if you're pursued by wolves. Short version: drop a boot, not the horse. One time, a guy you knew tried to shortcut through a sacred burial mound. Thought it would save half a day. He was found a week later with his horse standing patiently beside him, and every local shaman giving him the side eye for waking up the ancestors. No shortcuts. You stick to the marked paths even when they wind like a drunk eel across the landscape. They're marked by cairns ribbons and the occasional skull on a stick, not ominous, just traditional. Your saddle creaks. Your stomach grumbles. Lunch is still a ways off. Maybe some dried meat and air-cured cheese if you're lucky. If not, you'll have to gnaw on one of the emergency turnips tied to your saddlebag. Again. But for now, you breathe deep. Smell the cold and marvel just a little that you're part of something so enormous, so weirdly efficient and so old school, that it makes modern delivery trucks look like indecisive ducks by comparison. And as your horse breaks into a gentle trot, hooves thudding against frozen earth, you wonder quietly how many other riders are out there right now, weaving across the steppe like silver threads in an invisible web, holding an empire together, one hoofbeat at a time. You make it to the relay station by late afternoon, just as the sky starts brushing itself with pink. The air has that quiet end-of-day heaviness, the kind that makes horses sleepy and riders hungrier than they admit. As you dismount, your legs wobble a bit typical after hours in the saddle. You give your horse a fond slap on the neck, whisper something vaguely encouraging, and lead it toward the small enclosure out back, where other courier mounts snort and shuffle like they're gossiping about the riders. The station itself is simple, a low-slung wooden structure with a thick felt roof perched sturdily against the breeze like it's been there forever. It probably has. Welcome to the YAM, the Mongol Empire's sprawling postal relay system. You're just one link in a chain that stretches thousands of kilometers from the freezing mountains of Karakoram to the warm ports of Persia, from the forests of Russia to the gardens of northern China. Now let's be honest. The word postal system makes it sound a bit too modern. Like you're about to hand over a package and get a receipt. Not quite. The YAM was a beautiful mess of logistics. Horses, hospitality, and occasionally yelling. Invented, or more accurately expanded, and weaponized by Genghis Khan himself. The YAM let his army's administrators and spies move messages faster than any other civilization in its time. Think of it as the Silk Road's nerdier cousin. Less silk, more sweaty saddlebags. Each relay station like this one, spaced about 25 to 40 kilometers apart, was part pit stop, part intelligence hub. Riders arrived half frozen and half starved. Got warm food, fresh mounts, and a quick dose of local news. Then off they went again. The word YAM comes from the Turkic for road or route, but in practice it came to mean the entire system, stations, paths, horses, and everything in between. Historians still argue whether the original structure was Genghis's own idea or adapted from earlier Chinese and Central Asian courier networks. Odds are he borrowed bits from everywhere and then supersized it Mongol style. That was sort of his whole thing. If it worked, he wanted a bigger version. Inside the station smells like butter tea, old saddles, and someone's attempt at boiling cabbage. A shaggy old man nods at you from the hearth. He's the station master here, and you've seen him before. You forget his name, something like Batu or not Batu. Everyone's someone Batu out here. He gestures to a stool near the fire, and you don't need to be asked twice. Sitting down feels like melting. Your dispatch, still secure. Your bones questionable. Soon, someone brings you a bowl of soup thick with barley and mysterious chunks that may once have been part of a sheep, possibly a goat, possibly both. It's hot, salty, and perfect. You eat like you haven't seen food in a week. Halfway through, the station master slides over a fresh horse tag and a weather update: high winds toward the north, a river half frozen toward the east, and a new ruling that couriers should avoid shouting near noble encampments after sundown. Apparently, someone spooked a noblewoman's falcon. You smile politely and slurp more soup. There's no mailbag exchange here. You're still the designated carrier for this dispatch, but you do pick up a few bits of verbal mail, gossip warnings, speculation. Someone saw a wolf pack trailing a caravan near the Altai range. Another rider claims a visiting Persian scholar at court can predict eclipses. The cook swears he saw a star fall straight into the river last night and swam out to see if it was still glowing. These snippets, half true or not, are the glue of this system. Mongol couriers didn't just carry letters, they carried knowledge. If there's a war brewing, a storm approaching, or a new kind of dried fish being traded in Samarkand, the yam will hear about it long before the merchants do. One of the fringe perks of the system is what we might call express privileges. You, as a yamchi, can legally demand supplies, fresh horses, or even a place to sleep from local townsfolk. Of course, you're supposed to show them your paidza, a medallion or plaque, proving your identity and mission. And you're supposed to be polite about it. Theoretically. Some riders abuse this. They swagger into villages, demand feasts, and leave with sacks of grain they don't need. Those riders tend not to last. Either the central office hears complaints, or the locals accidentally give them a wild horse next time. One that kicks. You're not that kind of rider. You follow the rules. Mostly. Except for that one time with the pickled onions in Karakoram. But that wasn't your fault, and the goats started it. Outside, the wind has picked up. You finish your food, brush crumbs from your tunic, and stretch your back until it pops. You hear the grooms readying your new horse, a muscular bay gelding with ears like judgmental eyebrows. One last moment by the fire, then you step outside again. The station fades into the background as you mount up and ride back into the vast open hush of the empire. Another 40 kilometers await before sunset, and somewhere ahead, another station, another bowl of mysterious soup, and maybe, just maybe, a letter, even more peculiar than the one beneath your robe. The yam never sleeps. Not really. And tonight, neither do you. You ride on. The next relay station looms into view, just as the sun kisses the horizon, a soft orange smear, melting into the steppe. You squint against the light, your body aching from the rhythm of the ride. The gelding beneath you breathes steady, but is glad for the stop. As you dismount, a stable boy, no older than 12, rushes over to take the reins. He gives you a curious glance, like he's trying to guess if you're important, dangerous, or just tired. The answer, of course, is yes. This station is a little larger than the last two gers. A fenced paddock and a lean-to, where someone appears to be either repairing a saddle or disassembling it out of boredom. You smell firewood, mutton fat, and something sweet, maybe pine sap, warming in a pot. You've arrived at the intersection of the Mongol Empire's logistics and hospitality departments. Inside the main jeer, the air is thick with heat and the dull hum of quiet conversation. A few other riders are here. One with a bleeding hand wrapped in cloth. Another snoring softly against a pile of horse blankets. A woman in her 40s, wiry and sharp-eyed, welcomes you with a nod and a ladle of warm milk. You sip it gratefully, salty, tangy, and oddly comforting, like being hugged by an aggressive cheese. This is the heart of the yam experience, the postal station. Not just a pit stop, but a microcosm of empire, where information rumors, travelers, and livestock all pass through, like particles in a giant nomadic bloodstream. While you warm your hands by the stove, your host tells you what's gone on since the last moon. A fire in the western woods took out 3 carts of timber. A merchant from Bukhara got caught trading fake jade. One courier, they say, arrived here with a live crane in his satchel. Claimed it was a diplomatic gift. The crane bit him and flew off. Historians still debate how standardized these stations really were. Some argue the Mongols maintained strict protocols. Same layout, same services, even standard menus. Others insist it was more of a well-intentioned chaos, with each station adapting to local resources and personalities. What's clear is that despite their far-flung locations, most stations functioned with remarkable reliability. You could arrive at one in the snowy peaks of the Tian Shan, or the sun-baked plains of Central Asia, and still find a hot meal, a fresh horse, and someone who knew the road ahead. One fringe tidbit you remember from training some of the best stations were unofficial. That is technically not on the books, but maintained by enthusiastic locals who hope to curry favor with the Great Khan's bureaucracy. Their logic: if a postal rider likes your hospitality, maybe you get better treatment next time the Empire wants to relocate your flock or collect a new tax. Mongol networking. Part intimidation, part fermented milk diplomacy. You take a seat near the door, watching as a teenage girl refills the stove with dried dung. Efficient, non-splintery. Surprisingly aromatic if you've been riding all day. Your dispatch is still untouched, sealed with a strip of yellow paper and a wax insignia shaped like a snow leopard. The only thing more serious than the seal is the punishment for breaking it. One courier once tried to peek at a document from a Persian ambassador. He ended up posted permanently into the side of a ravine. Mongol justice could be poetic that way. Still, every now and then, messages get misplaced. Horses stumble. Rivers swell. Riders disappear. There's even a tale, probably a lie, but a fun one about a courier who faked his own death, started a tea house in Tibet, and lived peacefully until a visiting lama recognized his handwriting. Your station host asks if you'll be moving on tonight or resting till dawn. You glance out the flap, moon-rising, air-crisp stars blinking awake. The next leg isn't long, but it crosses open terrain with few landmarks. Best to rest, now ride early. You settle into a bedroll near the fire dispatch tucked under your robe, one hand on your satchel. Around you, the room hums with quiet sounds. A spoon clinking in a bowl, a horse snorting outside, someone muttering in their sleep about boots. You let your breathing slow, your body sink. Just another stop, just another night. And in this moment, as you drift between alertness and the soft fog of dreams, you realize how strange it is that a world so vast can feel so familiar. From station to station, you are never home yet, never quite foreign. Every fire is new, but every welcome feels practiced. You are alone on the step, and yet part of something enormous, invisible, and constantly in motion. You smile at the thought and let the fire lull you into stillness. You wake before dawn, just as the first pale threads of light stretch across the fabric of the steppe. There's that moment of groggy confusion. Where am I? Whose socks are these? Why does my back feel like it wrestled a yak? But then you remember you're in a postal station somewhere between Karakoram and wherever this message is supposed to go. You roll your shoulders, shake off the stiffness, and take a moment to groan dramatically. No one hears. Everyone else is still snoring or faking it to avoid chores. Your new horse is waiting outside. This one's a shaggy gray mare with the suspicious expression of someone who's recently been tricked into something unpleasant. You give her a sugar cube from your pouch, not regulation, but we all have our little secrets. She snorts, possibly with gratitude. Mounting up, you tie your gear and adjust the dispatch once again under your robes. Then you take off hooves, muffled in the morning frost. The world around you is still asleep, painted in low blues and silvers. You ride slowly. At first, there's no rush, and this leg of the yam is famously rough on ankles and egos. After about half an hour, you pass one of the ceremonial cairns that dot the yam roots. Small piles of stones known as ovu, often draped with ribbons or scraps of cloth. You pause, dismount, and add a pebble. Not just out of respect, but habit. Riders do this for luck protection or just because everyone else does. Mongol superstition isn't exactly written down, but it's definitely followed. You also whisper a quick apology to the local spirits just in case you accidentally offended them last time by sneezing too loud near a sacred grove. Then it's back to the trail. The next few hours are a rhythm of hoofbeats and breathing, both yours and the mare's. You've done this so many times you barely need to think. Your body knows how to lean with the terrain, when to loosen the reins, when to duck under a hawthorn tree. The landscape shifts subtly. More hills, fewer shrubs, occasional rabbit tracks across the path. Somewhere to your left, a fox watches you pass, then vanishes like a guilty thought. You think about the horses, not just this one, but all of them. In the Mongol Empire, horses aren't just animals. They're co-workers, companions, occasional scapegoats. It wasn't me. It was the horse, and living symbols of mobility and survival. Mongol children learn to ride before they can walk properly. There are songs about horses, poems to them, even ghost stories where they come back and trample your enemies. Poetic justice with a whinny. Switching horses isn't just practical, it's ceremonial. At each relay station, the process has its own rhythm. Brushing down the old mount, greeting the new one, adjusting the tack. Sometimes even offering a few kind words or a joke. Yes, people talk to horses. And yes, they sometimes talk back though, usually with a flick of the ear or a carefully aimed sneeze. Historians still debate whether Mongol horses were truly as resilient as the records say. Some claim they could survive on frozen moss and still outrun a European warhorse. Others suggest that was optimistic. But there's no doubt they were sturdy, sure-footed, and above all, adapted to the punishing vastness of the steppe. Your current mare, for example, has already dodged 2 rabbit holes, 1 startled pheasant, and a suspiciously crunchy patch of snow. She knows this route better than you do. And when you pause for water at a frozen stream, she waits patiently, eyes half closed, tail flicking against invisible flies. You think not for the first time that horses might be the only creatures in this empire more exhausted than you. You munch a bit of dried curd arul, hard enough to crack a tooth if you're not careful. You chew slowly, mostly to avoid crying. It tastes like chalk and old ambition. You chase it with water that tastes faintly of metal and goat skin. Breakfast of champions. Along the trail you spot something strange, a bit of cloth caught on a bush, bright red, flapping in the breeze. You slow your horse, dismount, and inspect it. Just a scarf, possibly dropped by another rider or a merchant. You tie it to the nearest cairn with a nod. The wind claims it, twisting it like a flag. You ride on. By midday, the sun has risen fully, burning away the frost and making your face feel both awake and slightly grilled. The mare is sweating now, her sides slick, her breathing more labored. You reach a small hill and pause at the top to let her rest. From here, you can see the thread of the yam stretching ahead. Worn tracks, hoofprints, the occasional broken wheel half buried in snow. You also spot smoke on the horizon. The next station. Maybe even a decent meal. Maybe something with actual seasoning if the gods are smiling and the cook has something to prove. You give the mare a pat whisper, something encouraging, and head downhill. Somewhere in the back of your mind, you wonder what's in the dispatch you're carrying. It's not your place to know. But curiosity is a hungry creature. Could be a military order, a diplomatic invitation, a list of tribute items from a conquered city, or maybe just a reminder that someone forgot to pay their yak tax again. You'll never know. But the weight of it, the real weight, isn't in the parchment or the seal. It's in the trust. The whole empire, in some small, strange way, rests on your saddle. Not bad for a guy who once lost a boot in a bog and had to finish a route with one foot wrapped in horsehair. You smile at the memory, adjust your coat, and nudge the mare forward again. Another station ahead. Another meal. Another story, waiting in the quiet shuffle of hooves. By the time you arrive at the next station, the mare is foaming at the flanks, and your own backside feels like it's been politely beaten with a ladle. But there it is. Another low structure of stone and timber smoke, curling from a crooked chimney. A few horses huddled near a windbreak of stacked wood. You've gotten good at spotting these places from miles off your eyes, trained to look for signs of warmth, food, and potential sarcasm from the station master. This one is quiet, almost sleepy. A middle-aged man with a lopsided mustache greets you with a grunt. He takes the mare with a tenderness you appreciate. "Good horse," he mutters. "Smells like trouble, though." You don't ask what that means. Horses can hold grudges. Inside the station is simple and warm. Someone's been drying herbs above the hearth, and the room smells like smoked lamb and thyme. You're given a thin blanket, a flat pillow, and miraculously, a small wooden bowl of pickled radishes. You've never been so grateful for anything vinegary. After your brief meal and rest, you take a moment to check your cargo. Not because it's been tampered with, but because you always do. The dispatch is still there, sealed still, cool to the touch, still whispering importance without saying a word. But this time, curiosity pokes a little harder at your ribs. Because the letter isn't ordinary, it's wrapped in silk, embroidered with a symbol you don't recognize. A curling motif, almost serpentine. And beneath the wax seal, there's a second band dyed indigo, tied in a way that screams diplomatic headache. You've carried messages for generals, tax officials, even religious figures. But this looks different. Historians still argue whether dispatches like these carried codes or ciphers, especially during periods of Mongol expansion or internal rebellion. Some say the messages were layered, one obvious, one hidden, one only readable under heat or when read backward. Others insist the Mongols relied more on spoken intelligence than clever paper tricks. Still, you've heard rumors of couriers trained in memory who carried messages word for word across hundreds of kilometers. Nothing, written just facts and adrenaline. This letter might be one of those puzzles, or maybe it's just a note saying someone's cousin owes them a wedding goat. You won't find out, of course. Unless your horse reads, and if it does, it's been keeping very quiet about it. The station master offers you a replacement mount, a chestnut mare with a scar across her right shoulder. Fast, he says. Bit moody. Doesn't like ducks. You file that away under. Probably won't be a problem. You step outside and swing into the saddle. The wind has picked up again, tugging at your coat. As you ride out, the station master calls after you. "Careful through the next pass, last rider," said the bridge might be out. You nod, raise a hand, and begin your descent toward the valley. The next leg takes you through narrower paths marked by ancient trees and rock cairns etched with prayers. Some are Buddhist, some shamanistic, some just, odd. One has a carving of what looks like a dancing frog wearing a crown. You don't ask. The step has its own sense of humor. Midway through the path bends along a ridge, and you spot something up ahead, a collapsed wooden bridge over a half-frozen stream. Well, the last rider wasn't exaggerating. You stop, dismount, and scout the edges. There's a way across if you're careful. Some stones protrude from the bank like stepping stools for very determined goats. You lead the horse slowly. One misstep, and you'll both be sleeping in a cold puddle tonight. The mare hesitates once, twice, then follows, snorting like she has strong opinions about this arrangement. But you make it. You pause to tie a strip of red cloth to a nearby tree, a signal for future riders. Warning: footing unstable. Also, don't fall in. Not that they'll listen. Once back on the main trail, the terrain opens again. The cold hits harder. Here, no trees to block the wind, no hills to nestle behind. Just open plain, flat as a griddle, and about as friendly. The horse keeps a steady pace, ears twitching with every gust. You think about what this job actually is. You're not just a delivery boy with good balance. You're a thread in the vast, ever-moving web of Mongol information. This letter you're carrying might affect someone's life, someone's town, someone's entire province. It might warn of invaders, confirm a treaty, authorize grain distribution, or call a noble back to court. And you, tired, half-frozen, craving a bath you'll never get, are the one responsible for getting it there. You smile to yourself. No pressure. In the distance, you spot movement, another rider heading east. You both slow as you draw near. Protocol says you nod, acknowledge, and ride on, but this time you pause. You recognize the horse first, black with a distinctive white blaze. The rider is an old friend. Origin, a courier, like you, once famous for surviving 3 days in a blizzard by sleeping in a tree hollow with a goat. You exchange brief greetings, some stale dried fish, and the latest news bandits near the river crossing to the south. A noblewoman, traveling under disguise badly, and a new type of saddle blanket that supposedly massages your back as you ride. Neither of you believes that last one. Then without ceremony, you part ways. That's the life. Constant motion. Brief connections. Hooves and wind. The next station is still hours off. Your stomach grumbles. You check your pouch. One last piece of dried apple. You chew it slowly, savoring the ghost of sweetness. The chestnut mare picks up her pace, sensing the end of the day. You whisper encouragement. Adjust your reins and press on into the wind, into the story, into the strange and quiet rhythm of the yam. The wind keeps you company for the rest of the ride, steady, whispering, and just rude enough to make your nose run. You tug your scarf higher, even though it's already crusted with dried sweat and yesterday's cheese breath. But there's no one to impress out here. Just you, your horse, and the occasional judgmental bird watching from a scrubby bush. The next station appears right before sunset, crouched at the foot of a ridge like a loyal dog. You arrive stiff, half-frozen, and quietly proud of your ability to still walk after dismounting. Your host tonight is a round-faced woman with sharp eyes and a laugh that sounds like a kettle trying to boil too fast. She welcomes you inside, offers warm tea, and glances only once at the seal. Beneath your robe, an unspoken rule. Don't ask. Don't peek. Don't die mysteriously before breakfast. You settle in with a bowl of rice and boiled turnip. It's better than it sounds, which isn't saying much, but at least it's hot. While you eat, the station mistress hands you something, a thin, flat token made of metal and carved with intricate designs. You know immediately what it is. A pizza. This one isn't yours permanently. It's a temporary issue, authorized only for special courier missions. The emblem marks you as an official bearer of the Khan's authority. In theory, it allows you to requisition supplies, horses, or shelter from anyone anywhere in the empire. In practice, it also invites a lot of squinting, whispering, and the occasional, "Are you sure this isn't fake?" from paranoid gatekeepers. Still, it's a powerful item. Think of it as a medieval VIP pass, except it's made of bronze and might get you punched if you flash it too smugly. Historians still argue whether every courier was issued a paisa, or only the elite riders handling critical state correspondence. Some records suggest layers of authorization: bronze for standard messages, silver for military orders, gold for truly urgent business, like diplomacy or complaints about the emperor's wine going sour. Yours tonight is bronze with a stylized falcon etched at the top. You run your thumb over the grooves, and for a second, you feel just a little bit taller. Important. Trusted. Of course, this also means your message has officially been upgraded from "please deliver this sometime soon" to "deliver this," or be replaced with someone who can ride faster and look sadder at will. It's fine. You're used to the pressure. As the sky deepens to indigo, the station mistress tells you stories. She's been running this place for 15 years and has seen it all. Riders who came in with frostbite and left with stolen mittens letters that hummed allegedly, and one unfortunate man who tried to smuggle a squirrel disguised as an exotic cat. Didn't work, she says. Too bitey. She also reminds you gently to check the paisa's inscription. You flip it over and read the familiar phrase often attributed to the great Khan himself. By the power of eternal heaven, let none hinder this bearer. It's poetic authoritative, and just vague enough to get you out of a tight spot or into one depending on who's doing the hindering. You ask if there have been any problems along the next stretch. She nods. Some bandits near the river. Not Mongol. Kazakh maybe. Or pretending. They ran off when they saw the last rider's paisa. She squints at you. Keep it visible. You nod, sip your tea, and try not to imagine how you'd bluff your way through a standoff. With your luck, you'd end up trying to bribe them with your last pickle. Later, lying on a straw mattress beside the hearth, you can't sleep. The fire crackles softly. Outside, horses shift tails, swishing in the dark. You pull the blanket tighter and look at the paisa again, silhouetted in the firelight. You wonder how many hands it's passed through, what desperate rides it's seen, whether its metal has ever drawn blood-deflected arrows, or simply been thrown at a stubborn merchant who refused to share his beans. There's power in it, yes, but also pressure. This empire runs on trust, and you're holding a piece of it cold, heavy, silent. You finally drift off, just as the fire fades to embers. At dawn, you rise stiff and quiet like every other morning on the trail. You eat a quick bowl of grain mush. Don't ask what kind and saddle your new horse, a lean black stallion with an unsettlingly intelligent gaze. The kind of horse that makes you wonder if it's judging your posture. The station mistress sees you off. She gives you a packet of dried berries for energy and a flat look that says, "Don't die today, please." You nod, adjust the paisa so it's visible against your sash, and ride out into the gray morning. The trail ahead is rough patches of old snow, frostbitten shrubs, and the occasional stone that makes your teeth rattle. You ride fast but careful, scanning the horizon. By midday, you spot a traveler up ahead. Not a courier. A trader, maybe. He sees your paisa and steps off the trail, bowing slightly as you pass. There's that moment, that flicker of awe or fear, or perhaps just envy. It's strange being respected for a job that mostly involves saddle sores and vague instructions. Still, you nod politely, because even couriers have manners. And you ride on the paisa, catching sunlight now and then, like a slow blink from the sky itself. The road becomes less forgiving as the afternoon wears on. You're entering a region known for its weather, and not in the cheerful, "oh, look, a breeze" sort of way. No, this is the wind that tries to turn your eyelids inside out kind of weather. Out here, nature doesn't care about your schedule or the fact that you're carrying a letter with the weight of imperial urgency. The clouds begin stacking to the west, low thick in the color of boiled mutton fat. The black stallion beneath you senses it first. He snorts, tosses his head, and shortens his stride slightly. You murmur something soothing, but your hand tightens on the reins all the same. You've ridden through sandstorms and snowstorms before, but this one smells like ice smoke and trouble. Within the hour, the wind shifts and slams into you sideways. Your coat flaps like a disgruntled banner, and snow starts to fall. Not thick, not yet, but those sharp, spiky flakes that sting like tiny needles. You lower your head and urge the horse forward. Visibility drops fast. The world becomes soft and colorless, just vague gray shapes in the steady crunch of hooves. Somewhere in this swirling mess, you think you see a figure ahead. Could be a rock. Could be a person. You slow. It's a shrine. Just a simple stacked stone ovu, half buried in snow, with a wooden pole rising from the center, and tattered ribbons flapping like panicked birds. You circle it once and toss a pebble on the pile, more for luck than tradition. Then you press on. Your fingers begin to lose sensation, and even the horse is struggling now, his hooves punching through a thin crust of ice with every step. You look for landmarks, anything to tell you you're still on the path. A stand of scrub trees to the left, a jut of rock that looks like an old man mid-sneeze. Yes, you're close to the halfway mark. Then disaster, of course. You didn't think you'd escape a whole ride without one, did you? A gust of wind stronger than the rest hits you from the side. Your hat goes flying, your horse spooks, and your right foot slips from the stirrup. For a terrifying moment, you dangle like a confused sock before managing to right yourself. Barely. And in the scramble, you lose it. Not the dispatch, thank heaven. No, that's still safe under your coat, strapped tight and likely pressing a neat letter-shaped dent into your ribs. But your saddlebag is gone. It must have slipped off in the commotion, carried off maybe, or dropped somewhere behind you in the swirling white. It had your emergency food, your spare gloves, your best rock for intimidating geese. All gone. You could turn back, but that would cost hours, and this message can't be late. You curse quietly and in Mongol, which makes it feel more official, and ride on. Historians still debate just how often couriers lost supplies or cargo to bad weather. Some records suggest detailed protocols for weather delays, alternate routes. Even postal insurance, though. What that entailed is anyone's guess. A complimentary goat. A replacement hat? We'll never know. But most agree if the storm wasn't lethal, the mail kept moving. So you keep moving. Eventually the storm begins to ease. The wind settles. The snow lightens to a fine mist. Your horse lifts his head again. More confident now, ears swiveling in the wind's absence. And then, miracle of miracles, you see it smoke in the distance. A faint curl above the horizon. A station. You arrive looking like a snow-dusted mushroom. The gatekeeper blinks at you for a moment, then waves you in without a word. You dismount stiffly and let the stable hands take over. The stallion doesn't even pretend to care. He plods off toward warmth and oats probably to gossip about your hat incident. Inside the station is blissfully warm. Someone hands you a thick fur blanket. Another person passes you a steaming bowl of soup thin. Yes, but with a mysterious chunk that might be either potato or candle wax. Doesn't matter. You slurp it like it holds the secrets of the universe. Once your fingers regain feeling, you take stock. The paisa, still with you, tucked safely under your sash. The dispatch untouched. Your dignity, well, 50-50. The station master eyes you with mild amusement. He's younger than most, with the kind of mustache that looks like it grew out of spite. Storm caught you. He asks. You nod. Didn't lose the horse. Another nod. Lose anything. You hesitate. Then you lie. No. He nods back like he knows you're lying, but respects the effort. That night, as you thaw beside the fire, another courier arrives. Older, limping slightly with eyebrows like nesting birds. He grunts a hello, tosses you a strip of dried meat, and mutters, Snow spirits were dancing today. You raise your bowl in agreement. You've met those spirits. They have terrible manners. Later, while watching sparks drift up the chimney, you wonder not for the first time why you do this. The cold, the danger, the endless cycle of soup and saddle rash. But then you remember the feeling of galloping across open land, the wind in your ears, the message pressed to your chest, and that weird, quiet pride in knowing you're part of something enormous. You ride not just for silver or soup, but for the invisible pulse that holds an empire together. And tomorrow, you ride again. The next morning, the sky is a pale bowl of cold blue, as if the storm had never happened. You rise early, your joints making noises best left undescribed, and head out to check your new mount. She's a sturdy bay with a broad back and the distinct air of a horse who will do exactly what you ask as long as you ask nicely and don't sing. You pack lightly what little you have left after yesterday's saddlebag incident and tuck the dispatch tighter under your robe. It feels heavier now, not physically, but with that extra awareness that it somehow made it through wind and snow when your socks did not. The first hour of riding is uneventful, almost meditative. The steppe glitters with frost. Ice clings to the edges of every leafless shrub and low hill, turning the landscape into a sort of frozen whisper. You fall into the rhythm of the hooves, the gentle creak of the saddle, the quiet sounds of breath yours and the horse's. It's peaceful. Too peaceful. That's when the thought creeps in again. What if this isn't just a letter? You've seen the seal. You've felt the embroidery on the wrapping. You've been handed a pizza for it. And more curiously, no one has told you what it contains. Normally, a courier might get a basic briefing. This is for the Khan's cousin, or just a tax update. But this one, total silence. No names, no origin. Just go and be fast. You start to feel the eyes. Not literal eyes, though. Hawks wheel high above, scanning for mice or divine metaphors. No. This is the feeling of being watched in a more political sense. You're not just a courier now. You might be a chess piece. You pass a lone herder not long after. He waves you down for a quick word. Seen anything strange on the trail? He asks, scratching behind his ear, like the answer might be hiding there. You shake your head. He squints at the pizza gleaming on your sash. Ah, he says, didn't think so. You ride on. A few kilometers later, you spot movement near the ridge. 2 riders. Not postal. Not merchants, either. Too quiet, too spread out. They aren't following you exactly, but they're pacing you in that lazy, meandering way people use when they don't want to seem like they're pacing you. You slow down. So do they. You speed up. Same story. Your horse feels it too. Her ears twitch. Her gait shifts subtly as if preparing to turn or bolt. You do a quick mental inventory. No food, 1 small knife, an angry bay mare, and a very valuable message. Not a lot to work with. Historians still argue whether yam riders were occasionally used as spies, or more intriguingly as bait. It's not well documented for obvious reasons. But there are tales of messages deliberately leaked or couriers carrying decoy letters to draw out enemies. If that's what's happening now, no one told you. Classic. You veer off the path, slightly heading toward a cluster of rocks. It's subtle, plausible, just a rider checking a hoof or looking for shelter. But it gives you a better view of the two figures. One has a bow slung across their back. The other leads a pack horse. You dismount slowly, pretending to adjust your stirrup, and casually rest one hand near your knife. You keep your breathing, even your movements slow. The key is to act like someone with nothing to hide but no time for nonsense. Eventually, the two riders continue on, heading east without a word. Just passing through. Maybe. You remount and ride a little faster. By late afternoon, you reach a narrow gorge, one of those places that feels like it's always holding its breath. The walls rise steeply. The path narrows, and sound echoes strangely. You guide your mare carefully, her hooves clicking against stone. A lone crow watches from a ledge, looking smug. Halfway through, you spot a small camp tucked into the rocks. A fire, long cold. Someone's been here recently. A few hoofprints. A strip of cloth. No obvious sign of threat, but it leaves your skin prickling. The wind picks up as you emerge from the gorge. It's almost a relief to return to open land, even if that land includes a suspicious number of animal skulls piled by the roadside. Traditional, yes. Comforting, less so. You reach the next station just before nightfall. It's one of the quieter ones. No other riders. Just an elderly couple who run it like a family inn, with an unusually high goat-to-human ratio. They feed you dumplings stuffed with something. You don't ask. You just nod, chew, and make the appropriate noises of appreciation. You ask if they've seen other travelers. They exchange a glance. A few, the man says, "Quiet ones." You nod. How quiet? The kind who don't say thank you when you give them soup. Ah, bandits or nobles. Hard to say. That night, you don't sleep well. You lie under thick blankets, dispatch close to your chest, and try not to imagine eyes watching from the hills or footsteps crunching in the snow outside. You listen to the goats shifting in their pen. You listen to the wind sighing against the yurt. You wonder, not for the first time, what would happen if you didn't deliver this message. If you simply vanished, dropped the dispatch in a river, traded the pizza for a new name, moved to a quiet valley somewhere, and opened a saddle repair shop. But no, that's not you. You're a courier of the yam. You deliver what others can't through what others won't. And you do it because someone has to. Someone has to hold the threads together while history tries to unravel them. You close your eyes. Just a few hours. You'll ride again at dawn. The air smells like frozen milk and damp wool when you rise the next morning. You shake the frost from your blanket and roll your aching shoulders, listening to the quiet shuffling of goats outside and the gentle creak of the yurt's wooden frame. The old couple is already up. She's boiling tea, and he's humming a song that has no real tune, just the steady rhythm of someone who's been awake since the concept of time began. They hand you a bowl of millet porridge with a single dried apricot on top, a breakfast that seems ceremonial in its simplicity. You eat it slowly, savoring the texture, and nod your thanks. Then you repack what little you have, strap the dispatch back into place, and step outside to meet your new travel companion. The mare for this leg is a white-coated beauty with ears like worried commas. She snorts when you approach, but lets you saddle her without complaint. A good sign. You stroke her neck and whisper nonsense to her, while cinching the girth just enough to let her know you're friendly, but not weird. Soon you're off again. Hooves crunching rhythmically on the frost-bitten ground. The world smells clean this morning, sharp and thin like the breath of a well-swept temple. You watch the mist rise from the steppe as the sun begins its slow crawl up the horizon, turning everything pale gold and powder blue. It's beautiful, but also quiet. Too quiet. You're reminded suddenly of an aspect of the yam that doesn't get written into the official records. The smell. The life of a postal courier is soaked in scent. Not always pleasant, mind you. Right now, for example, your coat smells like campfire smoke, goat hair, horse sweat, and whatever mystery meat the old woman stuffed into those dumplings. You catch a whiff of your own boots and sincerely hope the horse doesn't take it personally. And she's not exempt either. Mongol horses aren't exactly perfumed creatures. They're functional. You've ridden stallions that smelled like they'd rolled in fermented cabbage mares that somehow produced a scent reminiscent of damp parchment. And once memorably, a gelding that carried the aroma of warm onions for reasons you never figured out. Bathing isn't a regular part of your routine. Out here, water is precious, and washing is rarely worth the risk of pneumonia. You freshen up when you can wipe your face, maybe scrub your teeth with a birch twig. But mostly you rely on the cold to numb your nostrils, and a healthy dose of mutual olfactory forgiveness from anyone within 10 paces. Historians still debate how Mongol hygiene stacked up against that of other medieval cultures. Some accounts suggest they avoided bathing altogether for fear of angering water spirits. Others describe careful cleansing rituals using steamed sand or fermented dairy. There's also the persistent tale of Genghis Khan, insisting his soldiers stay free of strong smells to avoid attracting animals, or worse, curious wives. Whatever the truth, it's clear that cleanliness was negotiable. Odor was part of the uniform. You right now smell like someone who's halfway through conquering a continent and has stopped caring what anyone thinks. It's liberating, in a way. As the sun climbs higher, the road levels out. You pass a few landmarks, a cluster of larch trees, a cairn wrapped in new blue cloth, a stone carved with a script you can't read, but that hums with history. The wind picks up just enough to make you tighten your coat and hunch forward slightly. The mare doesn't complain. She's too busy keeping her footing along a trail that's increasingly rocky and narrow. Around midday, you reach a shallow valley. Smoke rises from somewhere beyond the hills. Could be your next station. Could be someone's herder camp. You keep riding. But before you reach it, you're flagged down. A man steps into view from behind a boulder, one hand raised in greeting, the other resting on the hilt of a short blade. He's wearing the layered robes of a steppe hunter, and his hat is stitched with a pattern you vaguely recognize, tribal, not imperial. You stop. He doesn't move closer, just stares, and then, in a tone that's surprisingly polite, asks, "Are you carrying a message for the Khan?" You don't answer. Instead, you let the paisa speak for you, slowly lifting the bronze badge from under your coat and holding it up, catching the light just enough to make the falcon glint. The man squints, then nods, not apologetic, not impressed, just aware. "Safe travels," he says, and steps back off the trail. You nod once, lower the paisa, and ride on. Behind you, he watches until you're out of sight. It's not the first time this has happened. There are watchers all across the steppe. Bandits, spies, border, scouts, and sometimes people who just want to be part of the story without actually doing anything. You never know what they want. But the paisa, that symbol of authority, has a strange effect on people. It inspires caution, sometimes. Reverence, occasionally resentment. The truth is, being a courier makes you invisible and visible at the same time. Most people ignore you until they see the badge. Then they remember you're the hand of the empire, even if your boots are leaking and your breath smells like reheated yak. By late afternoon, you finally reach the station, just a single yurt half buried in snow. Smoke rises from the chimney and a pot bubbles over a low fire outside. A woman steps out to greet you. She's dressed in layers of felt and leather, and the only thing sharper than her cheekbones is the knife on her belt. "Long ride?" she asks. You nod. "Not the worst." She looks at the mare. "She's better at this than you are." You don't argue. Inside the yurt is warm and smells like pine resin and onion broth. You're given a thick cup of butter tea and a slice of bread so dense it could be used as a weapon. You chew slowly and let your thoughts quiet. The dispatch is still safe. Your limbs are sore, your clothes are damp, but you've made it another day. You lean back, cradling the cup, and close your eyes for a moment. Outside, the wind rises again, brushing against the yurt like a giant hand smoothing a blanket. By the time you leave the yurt the next morning, your limbs are sore but rested. Your belly is reasonably full, and you're beginning to smell faintly of pine smoke and horse. A distinct improvement over yesterday, if we're being honest. You mount up on your new horse, a dark, rangy gelding with a long face and the emotional availability of a stone tablet, and set off once more across the steppe. Today's leg takes you across open plains, rolling gently like the ocean on pause. The wind is calmer now, and the sky is a wide pale blue that stretches forever in every direction. You ride in silence. The only sounds your horse is breathing, the creak of your saddle, and the occasional existential sigh when you remember how many kilometers are left. Still, it gives you time to think not just about the message nestled under your coat, or the paisa glinting faintly at your side, but about the man behind it all. The reason the yam even exists. Genghis Khan. The name alone has weight. Even now, riding across his empire like a pebble bouncing in a riverbed, you feel his presence, not mystical, not ghostly, but logistical. He's in every well-placed station, every path carved into the hills, every fresh horse waiting at the right place at the right time. The yam wasn't just military genius. It was infrastructure control, the glue that held his webbed empire together. Historians still argue whether the yam was truly Genghis Khan's invention, or simply a refinement of older systems. The Chinese had imperial couriers long before the Mongols. Persian empires had their own relay networks. But what the Mongols did, what he did, was unify it, expand it, and make it an extension of state power, so efficient it could make a scribe weep. You think about what that meant. An empire the size of 2 continents, held together not just by conquest, but by communication. You could ride from Korea to Hungary, and never be more than a day's ride from the next station. Orders moved faster than armies. News outpaced rebellion. If you wanted to know what was happening in Samarkand, you didn't wait weeks for rumors. You got a letter, sealed, authorized, delivered on horseback by someone like you. That was Genghis's vision, a state that moved. Swiftly, silently, without friction. And it worked. Mostly. Of course, even the smoothest system has its quirks. You recall a story passed around among the couriers about the time a dispatch was delayed because the rider stopped to court a local noblewoman. The letter eventually arrived 3 days late, smelling suspiciously of perfume and goat milk. He was reassigned to camel duty in the Gobi Desert for a season. Lesson learned. Still for every story. Like that, there are 10 of riders who cross deserts, rivers, and mountains just to get a single scroll to the right pair of hands. Like you're doing now. You stop near a shallow stream for water. The gelding drinks greedily, tail twitching with satisfaction. You splash some on your face, wiping away dust and fatigue. Then you sit back and look at the horizon. You wonder briefly, lazily, how far the empire stretches in that direction. Where the roads end, if they end at all. It's strange. When you first started, you imagined the yam as a series of roads, a path, a track, something solid beneath your feet. But it's more than that. It's a concept, a promise, that a message can always get through, that somewhere out there, someone is waiting to read your words. You mount up again and keep riding. By early afternoon, the landscape begins to change. Fewer shrubs, now more exposed rock. The air feels drier, flatter. You pass an abandoned camp, just a circle of stones, a collapsed tent, and a rusted kettle. Someone forgot or left on purpose. A hawk circles overhead. You give it a nod. Out here, that counts as conversation. Soon you spot movement ahead. A caravan small, maybe 5 or 6 camels, a few mules, and a cluster of travelers wrapped in layers of wool. You slow as you approach. They step aside, offering space with practiced ease. One of them raises a hand in greeting, then spots your paitsa and bows slightly, face unreadable under their scarf. They ask where you're heading, but you don't answer. You just nod and keep moving. It's not rudeness. It's the uniform. You hear them murmuring as you pass. Courier, someone says. From Karakoram, maybe. Another voice replies, No. Look at the horse. Northern breed. Probably came down from the Altai. You resist the urge to correct them. You don't even know where this horse is from. You ride until sunset begins to paint the hills gold. The next station is within sight. Smoke curling lazily from its chimney. Horses grazing nearby a boy, sitting cross-legged outside playing a flute that squeaks like a duck having second thoughts. You're welcomed in, without fanfare. They've been expecting someone. You warm your hands near the fire, accept a bowl of soup, and stretch out your legs with a sigh that sounds like it came from somewhere beneath your knees. You think again about Genghis Khan, not the conqueror, but the planner. The man who thought, yes, let's build a web across the world and run it on horses and nerve. It's ridiculous. It's brilliant. It's what you're living day by day, saddle sore by saddle sore. You take a last sip of broth and lean back, letting the warmth sink into your bones. One day, this empire might fall. The roads may fade, the stations crumble. The paisa melt down into trinkets sold in markets no one remembers. But tonight, the message still moves. And you're the one moving it. The station master rouses you at dawn. Not with a shout, but a kettle being set just a little too loudly on the stove. The universal sign of time to leave, dear guest. You stretch yawn like a cave bear and sit up slowly, blanket sliding off your shoulders, in a soft heap of warmth you already miss. Outside, the first hints of light stretch across the land like lazy fingers reaching for coffee. Today's mount is a mottled gray gelding with a suspicious eye and a surprisingly fancy braided tail. You give him a skeptical once-over. He blinks at you unimpressed. You both silently agree to tolerate each other for at least one day. As you saddle up, the station master offers you a second helping of millet gruel. You decline politely, but firmly. After the last batch turned out to contain what may have been pickled fish skin, you're sticking to dried meat and cautious optimism. The trail today runs low through a stretch of wind-swept hills where the grass bends like it's whispering secrets to the ground. You ride in silence, the world hushed around you, but your thoughts are anything but quiet. Because last night you overheard something. A quiet conversation between the station master and another guest, a local elder, judging by the voice. You'd been half asleep when you heard it, but one phrase stuck. The message never reached its destination. They say it was intercepted. Your heart hadn't pounded so hard in weeks. You hadn't moved. Just lay there, eyes closed, pretending to sleep, while every instinct screamed, "Don't react." Intercepted. That's a word that turns a simple job into a dangerous one. it doesn't necessarily mean your message, but it also doesn't not. You think of the riders who passed you, the camp with the cold fire, the odd questions from strangers. It's all starting to stack up like a tower of slightly suspicious dumplings. And then there's the matter of that last letter you delivered in Karakoram, a silk-wrapped, double-sealed document that required your signature 3 passwords and the approval of a man with more rings than fingers. Ever since then, your assignments have come with fewer explanations and more important seals. So maybe this is all coincidence. Or maybe someone somewhere really doesn't want this message delivered. Historians still debate how secure the yam truly was. Some believe it was foolproof imperial authority, swift justice, and an entire network of watchful eyes ensuring obedience. Others point to reports of tampered messages, corrupt station keepers, and entire relay points going rogue during political upheavals. One thing is certain. If you did intercept a message, you'd better know what you're doing. Because if the Mongol court found out, the punishment was swift and extremely creative. Think less slap on the wrist and more strapped to a plank and dragged behind a horse until you agree it was a bad idea. As you ride, you check the dispatch again. Not the seal still intact, but the feel of it. The silk wrapping is tight. The weight is balanced. No tampering. Yet. You also adjust the paisa on your sash, making sure it catches the light just enough to be visible from a distance. It's not a weapon, but it can keep you from becoming a cautionary tale. Most of the time. By midday, you reach a fork in the road. One path dips into a narrow valley. The other follows a longer arc around the hills. You know the valley's faster. You also know it's a prime spot for an ambush. You pause. The gelding snorts as if to say, "Choose wisely, or we both end up in someone's stew." You take the longer path. It's dull, dusty, and adds an hour to your ride, but the risk feels lower. Out here, instinct is as valuable as a good sword, and yours has been twitching like a cat near a thunderstorm. Halfway around the arc, you pass another rider coming the opposite direction. He nods politely. You nod back. Just 2 riders crossing paths. Nothing odd. Except his horse is lathered with sweat and he has no saddlebag. You glance over your shoulder once you pass him. He doesn't look back. The rest of the day is quiet, but not comfortably so. You feel like you're riding inside a glass bubble, fragile, exposed, breakable. You check your gear every half hour. You even count hoofbeats just to stay sharp. When you finally spot the next station, it's nearly sunset. This one's tucked against a rocky bluff, protected from wind, but hard to reach. Smart. Defensive. The station keeper is a lean woman with tired eyes and a voice like dry reeds. She offers you warm broth and a slab of roasted root vegetables. As you eat, she asks your destination. Not unusual. You give her the vague approved answer. West. She doesn't press. But later, as you prepare your bedroll, she lingers nearby. Be careful tomorrow, she says softly like a thread of wind. Someone passed through here last week, asking a lot of questions about the paisa riders. You nod, quietly grateful. Tonight, you sleep with your knife unsheathed under the blanket and your dispatch tucked into your tunic like a second heartbeat. You dream of horses galloping across a burning plain, of scrolls unraveling into rivers, of riders vanishing into smoke. You wake before dawn. The message is still with you, and so you ride. You set out under a sky still smeared with stars, the first hints of day stretching like pale threads over the eastern horizon. The station keeper nods you off with a tight, silent look. No extra chatter, no parting words. Just a final glance at the paisa, and then at your face, as if committing both to memory. You take the hint. Keep your eyes open. Don't trust the scenery just because it's pretty. Your new mount is a spirited dun mare with a high-stepping gait and the kind of side-eye that implies she's already rated your riding skills and found them adequate. She moves like she has somewhere to be, and you're just lucky to be included in her schedule. You don't argue. The trail ahead narrows through a band of low hills and patchy woods, sparser now, less for hiding in, and more for tripping over if you're inattentive. You ride light, everything packed close to your body, one hand always hovering near your knife. This isn't paranoia anymore. It's protocol. And this morning the yam feels different. Not broken, not stopped, but, frayed. You pass a crumbling waymarker at the base of a ridge once painted red, now faded to the color of dried blood. You spot a shrine that's been defaced, small totems, pulled down the prayer scarves, tangled in mud. You even pass a half-burnt post station, just a blackened husk in the wind. No smoke, no bodies. Just the eerie quiet of a place that no longer has purpose. You dismount cautiously and look around. The ashes are cold. Whoever did this is long gone. But you can still make out the broken support beam where the message chest would have been stored. You run your fingers along the charred wood and feel a flicker of something cold in your stomach. This isn't just weather or neglect. It's sabotage. Historians still argue about how often the yam was targeted during internal unrest. Some sources describe rebel groups attacking stations to cut off imperial control. Others suggest rival khans or power-hungry generals occasionally interrupted the relay system as a form of soft rebellion, never admitting it outright, but making the road just dangerous enough to slow down decisions. You don't know who burned this station, but you know one thing for sure. Someone wanted a message not to get through. You ride on. A few hours later, you reach a fork with a small, unmarked structure, what riders call a shadow stop. It's not officially part of the yam, but it's maintained by families or local lords who value imperial favor. Sometimes these places are safer than the main stations. Other times, they're traps dressed in hospitality. Still, you approach, carefully. A young woman opens the door. She's tall, sun-browned with the weary look of someone who's hosted too many travelers and slept through too few nights. She gestures you in without a word. Inside, it's warmer than expected, and a pot of broth steams over the fire. There's no one else in the room. You eat without speaking, letting the quiet stretch out like a blanket between you. She watches the door. Not you, and keeps one hand near the fireplace poker. You finally break the silence. Any trouble lately? She doesn't answer right away, just stirs the pot. Then 2 men came through, 2 days ago. Didn't eat, just asked questions. What kind? About riders. About a gray horse. About a man with a bronze paisa. She glances at your sash. Doesn't ask anything more. You finish your food, thank her quietly, and remount. The mare snorts, eager to move again, and you let her break into a gentle trot as you put distance between you and that small, too quiet outpost. The next stretch of trail is empty. No travelers. No merchants. No other riders. Just you and the wind. You try to focus off the rhythm hooves, breath, heartbeat, but the tension follows you like a second shadow. You check the seal of the dispatch again, your fingers brushing the intricate silk. Still intact, still unread, still mysterious. Who wants this message intercepted? And more worryingly, what happens if they succeed? You reach the next relay station just after sundown. It's bigger than the others. 2 yurts, 3 horses in a pen, and a boy playing a flute that thankfully is less squeaky than the last one. The station mistress is older, with sharp eyebrows and a walking stick that probably has a story of its own. She eyes you up and down and offers a curt, "You're late." You don't bother explaining the burnt station or the watchers or the shadow stop. Instead, you hand over the paisa and ask for a fast horse. She frowns, then gestures to the back paddock. "Take the black one," she says. He bites. You nod. Of course he does. As you prepare for the next leg, the station mistress sits beside you, sipping tea that smells like over-steeped onions. "You've heard, haven't you?" she says. "About the riders disappearing." You glance at her. Disappearing. She nods slowly. Not all. Just a few. Only the ones carrying high-seal dispatches. The kind that get wrapped in silk and stitched with strange symbols. She doesn't look at your chest where the message rests beneath your coat. You don't reply. The fire crackles. Later, after the station quiets and the horses settle, you lie in your blanket staring at the roof beams. You think of the other riders, those who vanished mid-route, their names slowly erased from logs and memories. You think of your message wrapped like a treasure, whispering nothing and everything all at once. And then finally, you sleep. You dream of galloping through a tunnel of ink scrolls, fluttering like wings, and a voice, calm, low, repeating, "Deliver it. Deliver it." You wake before dawn and ride. Your horse does in fact bite. Not hard, just enough to remind you that this partnership is conditional. He's a tall, powerful, black gelding with a thick mane and hooves that sound like war drums when they strike frozen ground. He has the look of an animal who once outran a thunderstorm, and now considers everything else mildly boring. You name him Diplomacy under your breath. It seems ironic enough to please him. The road ahead twists through low valleys and scrubland. It's colder today, but the kind of cold that feels clean air so sharp you could cut silk on it. Your breath fogs in slow puffs, and every exhale makes you think still here, still breathing, still riding. The terrain gets trickier as the hours pass. Narrow ridges, loose rocks and steep inclines that make your thighs question your life choices. You dismount often to ease the horse's burden. He doesn't thank you, but he also doesn't bite again. Progress. And it's during one of these climbs halfway up a slope, strewn with frost-slick boulders, that you hear it. A howl. Distant. Echoing. Too long, too low to be a dog. The kind of sound that slides under your skin and lodges behind your ribs. Your horse stops mid-step. Ears pricked, tail stiff. You scan the horizon. Nothing. You keep moving. Slowly. Quietly. This part of the steppe has a reputation. Riders call it Whisper Ridge, though no official map names it. Not because of the wind, but because strange things happen here. Like the howls. Like riders who swear they were followed by lights that hovered in the trees or heard voices calling their names from empty hillsides. One courier claimed he saw a line of ghost horses crossing the ridge at sunset, their hooves never touching the ground. Historians, of course, roll their eyes. They attribute these tales to exhaustion, isolation, the brain playing tricks in a place so vast and so quiet that your own thoughts start speaking in someone else's voice. But riders know better. You reach the top of the ridge and pause. The land spreads below you, flat, open, featureless. You can see the trail clearly for kilometers, but you don't move yet, because there's a presence. Not a person, not quite. Just a sense and awareness, like the world is holding its breath, like something is listening. You adjust the paisa on your sash, not for display now, but for protection. Some believe the badge carries not just political authority, but spiritual weight. That it marks you as a servant of the Khan, yes, but also as someone watched over by ancient forces, Whether they're helpful or just curious is anyone's guess. You ride down the other side slowly, every hoofbeat sounding like it might break a spell. Halfway down, you spot something off the trail, a bundle of fabric half buried in snow. You dismount and approach. It's a cloak, and next to it a boot. No footprints, no horse tracks, just the items placed carefully, almost ceremonially. You check the cloak. No blood, no obvious damage. But there's a symbol stitched near the hem, a small circle with 4 spokes. A rider's mark. You know it. His name was Timur, a quiet, serious courier who once lent you a knife when yours snapped mid-ride. He'd been assigned to a diplomatic run 3 weeks ago. No one's seen him since. You rebury the cloak with a small stone cairn. A rider's farewell. No prayers, just a moment of stillness. Then you mount up again, whisper something to the horse, and move on. The rest of the day is a blur. Flatland, low shrubs, sky as wide as forever. You pass a herd of wild antelope, their hooves barely touching the earth as they bound away. You pass a crow, perched on a skeleton of a tree, eyeing you. Like a miser, watches a coin purse. You think about Timur, about the message he never delivered, about the thing, whatever it is, that might be following this road, watching riders, waiting for the ones carrying something important. You ride faster. By twilight, you reach a long, shallow river. The bridge is intact but narrow, just a few logs roped together and dusted with ice. You lead the horse across on foot, one hand on the reins, the other gripping the dispatch like it might fly away. The water beneath you murmurs softly like it's trying to remember a song. On the other side, a simple wooden shelter waits, just 4 walls and a roof, not even a door. No station, just a rest point. Inside, you find the remains of a fire, and carved into one of the beams, a phrase in Mongol script: ride well, speak little, be remembered. You smile, not because it's funny, but because it feels like something left just for you. You build a small fire, boil a handful of tea leaves in your dented kettle, and chew on what's left of your dried meat. It tastes like old resolve and questionable seasoning. That night, the wind is full of sounds. Not just howls now. Bells. Whispers. The faint shuffle of hooves that never arrive. You stay awake longer than usual. One hand on your knife. The other on the dispatch. Just in case. When you finally sleep, your dreams are full of endless roads and voices that speak in languages older than paper. One voice asks, "Where are you going?" Another replies, "Where no one waits, but everyone listens." You wake with the stars still overhead, the fire long out, and the horse already pawing at the ground like he knows it's time. You ride on. The sky is still indigo when you break camp. The stars blink out one by one as the horizon blushes with early light, the kind that promises a calm day, but can't quite be trusted. Your horse diplomacy, still grim and regal, moves without complaint, his breath misting in the morning chill. You adjust the dispatch beneath your coat, tighter now, as if sheer pressure might keep it safe. You're close now, just a few more legs of the journey. The landscape shifts again, flatter, more open. The hills behind you shrink into memory, and ahead lies a wide plain, dotted with dry grasses and the occasional lonely tree. It feels exposed. Every time the wind picks up, you check the horizon. The next station is 2 days away, but today's ride will bring you to the final major outpost before that long stretch. One more chance to check the dispatch. One more chance to change horses. One more chance to be seen, tracked, or stopped. You keep your eyes moving. Somewhere around mid-morning, the terrain dips unexpectedly into a shallow basin lined with dry stream beds and clusters of gnarled shrubs. Your horse slows, ears twitching. He smells something. You do too. Smoke faint and acrid. Not the kind from a cozy station hearth, but the kind that lingers after something was meant to not be found. You nudge him forward. At the bottom of the basin, you find what's left of a way station. Burnt beams, scorched earth, a few scattered hoof prints in the dust already half erased by the wind. There's a scent you don't want to place. You don't look too closely. Instead, you dismount and walk the perimeter, checking for signs of survivors. You find none. What you do find, buried under a pile of stones and ash, is a carved wooden box. Its splintered lid gone contents missing, but the symbol on its side is unmistakable. It was a message chest. Someone went to a lot of trouble to ensure no one would read what was inside. You remount, hands tight on the reins. Historians still debate whether sabotage like this was strategic or simply spiteful, meant to halt communication, stir chaos, or send a message of a different kind. There are scrolls in distant libraries that hint at entire courier routes being disrupted during succession crises, each burned station a political punctuation mark. But this feels personal. The next hours blur into a dusty monotony. Your thoughts grind like wheels in deep ruts. Who is trying to stop this message? Is it just about power? Or is it something darker? Something secret enough to kill for? You don't know. But you keep riding. And then at the edge of the next rise, you see it, a lone figure standing beside the trail. No horse. No pack. Just a man in a long coat, arms crossed, watching you approach. You slow, but don't stop. As you near him, he raises one hand, not in threat, but in acknowledgement. His face is calm, unreadable. He doesn't speak. Neither do you. Then just as you pass, he turns and begins walking the opposite direction back into the wind. You glance behind you once. He's already gone. You don't relax after that. Not really. But you let the horse pick up pace again. He's eager now, sensing an end maybe, or just wanting to get out of this basin. By late afternoon, the land flattens again. You spot a distant curl of smoke, not black this time, not angry, but soft and gray. A proper station. The relief is quiet but real. You arrive just as the light turns golden. The station is intact, small, circular, efficient. A man greets you at the threshold with a cup of tea already steaming in his hand. He says nothing, just hands it over. Inside the room is warm. 3 horses doze in the paddock. A pot of stew bubbles. Someone is softly humming a tune you've heard before. An old lullaby half forgotten, sung to baby goats and nervous messengers alike. You sit by the fire dispatch still beneath your coat, heartbeat slowing now, like a drum winding down after a long ceremony. This station is quiet, calmer than any in days. The keeper sits across from you after a while, hands folded neatly, eyes sharp. "You've come a long way," he says, not as a question. You nod. He sips his tea. "You're not the first courier to pass through with urgency, but most don't make it this far. That catches your breath for just a moment. You say nothing." He leans forward slightly. "I won't ask what you're carrying, but if you plan to reach the fortress at Zunmod, you'll have to ride at dawn. The river's rising and the bridge may not hold after midday." You nod again. There's no ceremony here, no fanfare, just facts, terrain, time, the endless ticking rhythm of the yam. You sleep lightly that night, dispatch pressed beneath you, knife under your palm. Dreams come again of riders made of smoke, of letters that whisper in forgotten languages, of bridges that vanish just before you cross them. You wake cold, clear-eyed, ready. The next leg is the last. The courtyard is still, now the walls of the fortress guarding against the wind like the embrace of a worn coat. The horses have quieted their snorts, softened to warm breath in the dusk. Your cup is nearly empty. The tea cooled, but your fingers still wrap around it for the memory of heat. You close your eyes and feel the rhythm of the road still vibrating in your bones. The rise and fall of hills, the steady beat of hooves, the silence between stations where your thoughts were the only voice for miles. You picture the steps stretching behind you like an endless scroll, marked with stories, some told, some not. The messages you carried, the ones others never could. You remember the quiet looks exchanged with station keepers, the ghostly songs in the wind, the meals eaten in haste beside fires. You never stayed long enough to forget. And you feel the stillness now, not as absence, but presence. A different kind of movement, one that travels inward, not out. The stars begin to prick the sky above familiar constellations, hanging like soft lanterns. The fire in the courtyard crackles low. A breeze moves through your hair and leaves gently like a whisper, saying, "Rest now." You have ridden far. You have delivered what mattered. And the road will be there when you are ready again. For now, let the silence hold you. Let your breath slow. Let the world fade. Sleep, rider. Sleep.